that theme right now that's going on where people are like setting up for my Netflix documentary about, and then whatever they do, and it's them
Mhm.
getting into a chair.
I've seen
That's
it.
how
And
I,
like the music is in the background. Yeah.
that's how I feel right now.
This is so interesting being on the other side of this. I can't,
Interesting. Yes.
it is interesting. So I'm going to jump right into like why we're here, what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to start with a quote that came into my DMs about you. This is from a veteran ex VP of retail who worked in retail from the 70s up until the early 2000s. He's now a consultant, and he messaged me, I'm sure Bekki is a great person. In my opinion, she needs to be careful how she challenges industry professionals when she has no background functioning in retail that I could find. It will not facilitate a great reputation in the market. So, first off, like right off the bat, what's going through your mind when you hear something like that?
I think my very first response is he's right. Like I'm not a career retailer. I've never claimed to be one. That's always been a something I'm probably more aware of than anyone, and conscious about. But it also is a little silly because it's like that's why I'm here doing this with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I'm not assuming I know all the answers because I don't, and I am honest about my background. And I think I work with a lot of corporate retailers, people in corporate, and it's not their background either.
Mm.
But they are not always equipped or have the infrastructure or the permission to ask these kinds of questions.
Mm-hmm.
I also just think it's kind of annoying and sounds pretty obnoxious and presumptuous. And it makes me think of everything you've told me too about like, dude, if you were in stores in the 70s, you probably, it does not apply.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's interesting, besides the fact that it's like vaguely threatening,
Yes.
uh, there's a follow up in the later part of his message to me.
Oh,
He, we've talked about this. You referenced this on a podcast episode, and, Brene Brown kind of coined this idea of like the invisible army.
mm.
Um, well, this person clearly didn't want to seem like there was an invisible army. So he actually sent me a quote someone else said to him about you in DM. So there were two men DMing about you.
Oh,
And the quote from the other person who also works in retail, and that person works in retail currently. Uh, I find her company interesting when there is no retail in her background. Strange for sure, and thanks for the connection. And what's before you respond to that, that means that the first guy, his initial message to this other guy was like, "Don't you think it's crazy that this person is in?" And he revealed more than he probably meant to by sending that whole chunk to me.
right.
So there are people right now, we can presume, sort of having, why is this woman talking about our business? And so I think part of that is valid, not to sort of not to threaten, but I think it is like a human instinct to be genuinely curious about who people are and how to categorize them, right? Like, is this person a VP? Is this person like where can I put them in my mind? And I think to a lot of people, you might be an enigma. They're like, who is this person? I don't know this person. And I think the purpose of this episode is allowing people the opportunity to get to know you, to figure out who you are. I don't think for these people, we're going to answer that question in a way that's going to make them happy. This might make them even more angry, and that's fine. Um, but I do think it's an interesting opportunity to say, this is why you're here. And my follow up to that is, have you gotten any messages from anyone that question, like directly? Have people been like, who are you? What are you doing here?
Not not DMs, but comments from the same individual that sent you that DM. And maybe, honestly, maybe only one other person
Mhm.
who responded to our post about doing unannounced and consequence-free store visits.
Mhm.
She was very against that, and she brought up that she had checked my background and that maybe I didn't understand because I didn't have a background in retail.
I love that. What do you, besides the fact that people can't place you,
Hmm.
like that aside, from your perspective, what do you think the issue is? Like, what do you think is like nagging at these folks?
Whew. I mean, I think everyone's a little skeptical, like in the broader sense today, about grifters.
Hmm.
And everyone showing up claiming I'm a guru and I'm an expert and things like that. And people are right to be critical, to look into people's backgrounds and see if they actually have expertise in an area. So yeah, credit where credit's due for that. But I don't know. For in the first instance, I think that there is, and this isn't just about that person. It's also from all of our discussions. There are a group of people who want to defend the status
Hmm.
quo, and anyone coming in with new perspectives and trying to shake that up, I think, feels threatening.
Hmm.
So I imagine that that's it. And I mean, also to your point, like this other man is a consultant. So I don't know that we overlap at all in our services.
Hmm.
Probably not. I can't imagine a company being like, which one? Like, we're very different.
Hmm.
But maybe he's thinking that. Maybe, yeah, he's worked a long career. I'm sure he's worked hard, and I'm sure he's a helpful consultant now. And so to have me come in and also call myself a retail specific consultant probably seems annoying to him. I also don't think people understand what I do, and maybe that's a fault of mine
Hmm.
because I'm not a retail consultant, as in I'm going to come in and show you how to like comp better or fix your supply chain or inventory model or anything like that. I'm about employee experience
Hmm.
and employee perception and engagement. And if that is the vehicle through which I improve performance.
Hmm. I would argue you need what you do to make the first part happen, but
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I do think that's the whole that I've seen in every, like with all the tech and all the things that are talking about improving performance or efficiency and things like that. From where I sit, that's been like one of the sources of a decline in engagement.
Mhm.
And I don't see anyone addressing that specifically.
This is probably another episode, but because you said it, I want to address it. I think some companies, and this just occurred to me. I think some companies have given up on employee engagement. They're not going to admit that out loud, but I think some companies have this view of like, especially of younger generations. Well, they're never going to be happy. We can't do enough for them. So
Right.
let's keep it moving and worry about something else. Because this person that messaged me, and he's not the only one, there's another retail guy that he likes because they interact together a lot. They comment a lot about younger generations and work ethic and all this sort of stuff, and I it's really interesting to me. But again, that's another episode. You said something about people who challenge the status quo, and people not liking that. Which, hi, I agree. I have faced similar things. Have you always been that way? Like, is that like a innate property of Bekki? Like status quo, I need to challenge this. Like, we're
Yeah.
not to like turn this into like Becky's life story, but can you remember like the first time that happened or like where that genesis of that is?
I think it's an innate quality that I've always had. My I would call my mother like a hippie.
Hmm.
I think she was always encouraging me to challenge, question authority, right? Like
Hmm.
Not to just be contrarian, but question. If you don't understand something, it's okay. Even if someone seems like if it's your teacher or your boss. So I think that was part of it. But yeah, I've always, I don't know, I like all the words are negative, right? Like stubborn,
Mhm.
um, like one of my previous bosses called me a true believer, and he didn't mean it in a nice way, if it is a nice term. Like, but yes, I think I've always remembered it being part of who I am and something
Mhm.
I need to do, like a burning questions I have to ask if I don't understand why something is the way it is.
Because obviously, and I'm only basing this off of the questions you ask me, and sort of what you get curious about. Obviously, there's a part of the retail infrastructure around like inefficiency and injustice and like unfairness that's sort of like woven into the fabric of retail in some places more than others. And that seems to really like grind your gears. And so the biggest question of this episode to me is, okay, so you're the status quo questioner. There's these things that bother you, but why do you care? Why do you care? Because you're not, to your point, you're not in retail. It doesn't affect you how many employees are getting their uh, hours cut. You're going to live your life in Canada with your cute little wood wall and your books. Like, you're going to be fine. Um, for those who don't know, like you're into fitness, you can just do that. You can just devote your life to fitness. You can maybe consult, but you don't need to care about what happens to some random employee that you'll never meet. So why bother?
It's funny that I've never really thought about it like that before. I think, and tell me if this isn't answering uh, rawly or directly enough, but my the how I got here is my background is in as a creative, as brand identity design, graphic design before that, brand strategy, and I was in-house at an education company for over 12 years. So I started with them when they were kind of like a startup,
Mhm.
and 12 years later, without like any one big thing happening, I realized, and it's actually very similar to your story, after being directed to Simon Sinek and his books, I realized like how over those 12 years, what was so energizing and fun and challenging and fulfilling was like I dreaded it. Like I dreaded work. My stomach would sink if
Mhm.
I saw my boss calling. My heart would race. I was constantly like preparing well thought out emails that like where nothing no one could point out anything and to document things and proving that I was like anyway. So and that was the same company.
Mhm.
Like and I'm a super like I like to work. I'm a very career driven person. And once I noticed it and noticing the change in me, obviously outside of work too, like I like you're just a shell of yourself when you're working somewhere like that. Like you go home and you have no energy and everything sucks and you're pessimistic about the world and you're shorter with your loved ones and it sucks. It's a terrible way to live. And when I finally was like, I have to go, like I need to get out. I had nothing else lined up. I was like, I'll just do freelance brand or design work for a while until I figure something out. I did that. And when it started to get a little bit more, like I started getting clients and started to get a little bit more serious, and I had to kind of pick a lane. Like, do I want to keep doing my own business and what will it be? I actually, because of my experience and how like passionate I was about how work should be a decent place to be, a fulfilling thing, something that helps you like thrive and grow and gives you energy rather than something that just makes you shrink and hide. I thought employer branding was the answer, right? So it's like if you're familiar with most people know what employer branding is now, but back in those days, it was kind of new. So I was like, yeah, I don't really care about helping. I don't want to work for a marketing agency that's just going to like sell more products or something like that. I'm not really that passionate about that. But there's this new thing where companies now actually have to try to get people to choose them. And I can help them with their employer branding and bring the right people to the right company so that they don't end up in the shit situation that I was in for however many years. Um, so that's why I care, is because I've been the disengaged employee. Like, and it was terrible. And I think what was so frustrating about it, it was like it wasn't profitable, and it just didn't have to be that way.
Hmm.
Like it wasn't that hard to make things better, like to just treat people better. And so I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense. It wasn't making money. Everyone was like unhappy. So yeah, I thought I picked a line of work that would help me stop other people from experiencing that and stop companies, even, if they're well intentioned, from giving that experience to other people. But I think what happened when I started getting employer branding work is that I realized people were coming to me because they wanted an articulate, beautiful, clear employer brand. But that was because they were having engagement problems or turnover problems. And the brand, stopping at the brand, wasn't going to help them.
So I guess to follow up, again, you could have, I'm kind of like needling this point, but you could
Yeah.
have stopped there, right? You could have just done their employer branding,
Yeah.
seen behind the curtain and been like, oh, yikes, but I'll create something pretty. I'll help you hide
Yeah.
what's behind the curtain.
Yeah.
We don't need to, I don't need to be bothered with that because that's not what you're paying me for. You're paying me employer brand.
Yeah.
I would do that for you. I will make everyone think you're sustainable and fun and, all of the things that people are looking for. Why? I mean, there's really two questions. Why look behind the curtain and why care what's going on back there?
Um, so I think, to be fair, some of it is probably kind of selfish. Like I wanted my work to work.
Hmm.
I wanted it to do what my clients wanted it to do, to prove that I was good at this thing and I could help them. Um, and other than that, I think once I looked behind the curtain, there were too many loud, easy, obvious things, that it was just like, oh, this flies in the face of what we just wrote. you know? So I think that was part of it. Is like there is a point too in employer branding where you like if your client, if they're happy with you, they'll ask you for help with quote unquote activation,
Hmm.
and usually that means help us make posters, the career site, new PowerPoint decks, new this and that, signage in stores. We're hiring signage, like job postings. But when I was thinking about activation and knowing that reducing turnover was one of their goals with all of these things, I think because of my experience, my inclination was to start with the folks who are already there. And so I think part of it is because I wanted it to work. I
Hmm.
wanted my work to be effective, but like part of it is I just can't keep my stupid mouth shut. Like once I saw it, I don't know, I couldn't unsee it, and I don't know why I can't. I couldn't just walk away, and like I'm very like meta. Like I'm always wondering like what my true reason is for something. I was like, oh, maybe I saw it as like another potential stream of revenue. To be honest, like maybe I was like, well, this can keep going, and I can help with employee experience activation. Maybe that's part of it, but I think really I just truly believe in my heart of hearts that the world is so much better if people don't hate how they earn a living
Hmm.
like I did. And I don't think it's hard.
Mm. Did it surprise you sort of seeing behind the scenes, like what you saw and what you versus what you were creating? Not even versus what you were creating, but just did it surprise you what you found when you started like digging into these things?
For sure. Yes. And I think honestly, what surprised me the most was the lack of awareness
Mhm.
between like what corporate didn't know about the experience of frontline employees, and that like even if I asked, "Can we get that information?" There, it was like I was the first person who had ever asked that, and it's kind of like, well, I'm not sure. I can look into that. I can, like, I guess I can send an email to this person and see if there's someone we can talk to. Right? And so just that there wasn't a feedback loop there, I think that was what I was surprised about the most.
Mhm. I mean, I'm also wondering if it surprised you or shocked you really how much like low-hanging fruit there is that no one wants to pick. Like, did you find you were like, oh, if you just did that, just change that one thing,
Yeah.
and what was that met with when you said it out loud?
To the clients.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Um, I was definitely surprised at the amount of low-hanging fruit. I think with my clients, so they're mostly very large companies, and usually what I met with is like, I hear you. That's not really our purview, right? Like that's not really, yeah, we don't really touch that. That's like a operations thing. Or even what always cracks me up, that's a retail thing. Like it always cracks me up when people in corporate retail don't think they work in retail.
Hmm. Yeah.
um,
Well, they don't, but yeah.
right, yeah. So so I think yeah, that a lot of people feel powerless. I think
Mm.
that's what I was met with.
Mm. Well, I mean, there's a lot of like layers and bureaucracy. So I think, and
Yeah.
from my perspective, when I first met you and we were talking, that was actually one of the things that made me almost like soften a little bit towards corporate because I was like,
Right.
oh, this is, I'm picturing, when you're in the field and decisions are made that affect you poorly, sometimes you just picture like, an evil villain petting a
Yeah.
white cat in an office. And really, it's just like a bumbling sim bumping into walls. Like it's
Yeah.
not always malicious. Sometimes it's just they're on autopilot. One of the things I want to get back to, not just about status quo, but about caring. And this is something I've thought a lot about because we're similar. We're in very different careers, but similar in the sense that injustice bothers us, unfairness bothers us.
Mhm.
We care. And I think I actually said to someone recently because they asked me about something that was supposedly none of my business to care about, and they said, "Well, why do you care?" And I literally said, "You know, the other night, so I live in, Boston in downtown. There's obviously a homeless population. Where I go grocery shopping is like 2 blocks away. I have my little Nana cart that I push so I don't have to carry all my groceries. Um, and I was coming home late the other night. It was like 10 when I was like grocery shopping. And I came out of the grocery store with my cart, and there's like an entire population of homeless people like sitting on a stoop. They didn't say anything to me. I didn't say anything to them. But the sort of like juxtaposition of me wheeling home like $200 worth of groceries with
Yeah.
a bunch of people who cannot afford such things or not going back to an air conditioned apartment in this heat wave that we're in. And I said to this person who asked the question, I cared. I can't do anything at that moment. I can't solve the crisis that is homelessness.
Right.
I mean, I could let those 3 people sleep on my couch. That's not really a solution, but um, why did I care? And I don't think that for me, and I'm kind of projecting this onto you, but want to ask you for yourself.
Mhm.
It's not like care is a switch, right? It's not like you're like, okay, well, I don't care how the justice system works because I'm not a criminal, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge. etc. I don't care about homelessness because I don't work in a nonprofit dealing with homelessness, and it's not my fault they're homeless. So I'm only going to care, for me personally, I'm a store manager of retail. I'm only going to care about retail. That's my purview. I will stay in my lane. I think caring about humans is this thing that you either do or you don't. And it's
Yeah.
not a switch, it's not funneled. Um, and I kind of, you mentioned having this experience of your own at work. If you can remember, you might not. You start your branding, you're helping corporate clients. Was there like a moment or a thing you saw that sort of like triggered you into like, oh my God, these people are experiencing the same thing I experienced?
It's a good question. I think probably there was, and for what it's worth, like that's a great point. I never really just thought about like, yeah, I just fucking care. I'm the same way, Like I can't watch certain movies because like I'll feel terrible for like
Mhm.
a week or like there's some things I just can't. Um, but yeah, I think once I started getting like having long-term relationships with clients and they would relax in front of me and then they would start to express their frustration with their boss,
Mhm.
and they like, their lack of clarity and they're like, no, they sent it back. Like, I don't know why they don't like it. Like, I don't know. A couple things happened there. For one, realizing that these folks in corporate were becoming some level of disengaged, frustrated, shrinking, now stopping trusting themselves and trying to guess what their executive wanted.
Mhm.
And then something else that struck me about that moment was because a lot of my work starts with a poor employee engagement survey. And so they want to improve some or all or a bunch of numbers on the employee engagement survey. And so in this instance, that was the case. But watching that happen made me realize that that team that I was working with, who's all frustrated in their job, started trying to guess and design for that one or two executives above them
Mhm.
instead of trying to understand and design for the 100,000 people that are going to be taking this survey.
Mhm.
Uh, and so that was really frustrating for me to see. For one, just the lack of clarity that they were getting from their boss was really annoying. And two, that like you're telling me your goal is to improve this survey, and 90% of the people who are going to be taking it have nothing to do with that person. So, um, I already forgot your question. You're better at remembering questions than I am. Did that help? The moment?
Yeah, no, that helps. I'm
Yeah.
curious. I guess what I'm really trying to get at is obviously you've been honest and transparent, and even just in this conversation, that like
Yeah.
part of this may have been an opportunity for your business to expand. And I think that that's like natural. Like you also have to eat.
Sure.
You're not, you're not a saintly figure. None of us are. But there had to be these moments that led to, wow, this is surprising. And I think, you know, one of the things that I just want to throw in a personal anecdote is when I thought I had left retail for good and posted my very like, I'm done, goodbye. Lots of people reached out. Lots of people. Lots of people commented on my posts, by the way. And this is something I think about to this day because sometimes I want to go back into those messages and just whatever. But I got lots of DMs from regionals, a VP or two, almost like supporting me. Like, we get it. Like, it is a hot mess. As if, first of all, as if they have no ownership in that piece. But do you know what the difference between all of them and you is? Because you're the only one who did it. The only one out of all of those people.
What
You
is
were
it?
like, tell me more. I want to know. And I think about it now, you were actually my exit interview from retail.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that I've said a lot about you is that you're curious and you want to know. And I don't think there's enough curiosity in retail at the higher levels. Like no one's, and I don't know if they're not asking because they don't want the answer. They don't know what questions to even ask. Like there could be a lot of reasons. I think it's different for different people. I think egos are involved, you know, to
Yeah.
your point, designing something for an executive versus for the workforce. I think that happens in small ways in retail too. There's even with visual merchandising, I've seen people be like, "Well, this is how Sean likes the visual to look." Maybe he's the district, I'm sorry, not district. Maybe he's like the head of visual for the company or a VP. And it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
but it's really inconvenient for customers to like reach that or put that there. And they're like, but that's how he likes it visually. Like, who gives a shit about Sean? Like, is he gonna buy all my hats from me? Um, he's not. Customers are. That's who I need to concern myself with.
Right.
Um, and so there's a curiosity you have about what's happening and why it's happening. And I'm kind of, you know, you said earlier you've always been like that. You've always been like questioning authority and asking the whys. Is that just who you are? Like, are you just walking around on Earth, just everything being like, huh, I wonder why that's that way? Like, is that just also like an innate thing that's Bekki?
So it is, and I think that's a creative thing. I think like always not assuming that you understand how something works or why, yeah. And that goes like this goes hand in hand with my complete comfortability with looking like an idiot, looking and sounding like an idiot. It's like everything. Like I'm fast, like plumbing, indoor plumbing, you know what I mean? Like lots of people know more than me about how that works. I have no idea. But yeah, if I don't know, I don't assume I know, which means like the whole world is just like a place of wonder to me because I don't know a lot about a lot of things.
I wonder too if that's like, does that bother these people that you're asking questions and saying things because they assume they know? Do you know what I mean? They're like, well,
Yeah.
that's not the answer. Like, this is. And as I was like thinking about this episode, that one of the things that kept occurring to me was not that anyone has to ask the random guy on LinkedIn why he left retail. Like no one has to, no executive, they don't owe me that. I don't have delusions of grandeur. Okay, sometimes I have delusions of grandeur, but in this moment I don't. But I do think it's interesting that no one utilized that as an opportunity to be like, wow, I have a workforce that I'm afraid can't be honest with me. You've left, so tell me the things and tell me what you've seen. I also think though that there's this thing. I think it's everywhere. I don't think it's just retail. I think this is like maybe a human characteristic where we want dissenters or people who are curious or questioners to present in a certain way that's not bitter and not angry and like has the right intonation in their voice or the right cadence in their writing. Because I think where I am most critical of retail gets people sort of fired up. But when I sort of like dress it up pretty, people are like a little bit more willing to engage. And I think this VP that reached out to me that I can't get over this message, you know, it will not facilitate a great reputation in the market.
Yeah.
Why though? Like, and there's part of me that wish I got more curious with him and be like, but and why does she need and what would get her a great reputation? Lying? Or is that what you're saying?
Right.
Um, and so for me, I guess I want to ask, okay, so again, I've gotten these messages, you've gotten these comments.
Right.
We both have seen where executives have, not liked what you have to say, what I have to say, but we're still here. We're still doing the podcast. You still have a business you're running. It's not obviously you need to eat, I need to eat, but also we're both still like, yeah, we still have to ask. Like we still have to know what keeps you, besides just curiosity, what keeps you in it, in this sort of like, I don't want to call it a fight, but it kind of is the fight. What keeps you in the fight?
I mean, not to get super mushy, but like you, like now, like there are faces now. I already inherently cared. I just genuinely like do care and believe that the world would be a better place if everyone enjoyed work. But now when I'm thinking about, the work I do and store managers, I think about like you and, Kit and like Terry and Allison, like all the people who comment,
Hmm.
whole human beings, real human beings who care a lot and are good at what they do, care enough to listen on their free time to a podcast about retail. um, I think I I think what keeps me in it is that I believe we can start a movement, and me and talk about feelings of self grandeur. But I think that if we can frame it and be specific and show, I kind of hate this term, but like the business case
Hmm.
for doing this. I don't like it because I think being a decent human is a good enough reason to do something. But um, luckily, in this case, there's also a business case. So I think we can change things if it's one policy at a time. And I think we can nudge the status quo. And to your point about, you're always talking about the younger generation, I think they're going to help us.
For sure.
So I think it's the timing is right. And the pendulum has swung far enough in one direction where it has to come back. And I think we can help people bring it back.
Hmm.
I also just find it interesting work.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I like talking to you. I like hearing from all the people who listen and from other store managers. I love talking to the store managers of my clients. I like that's my version of like customer service that
Hmm.
you really love and get like energy and fulfillment out of. I like the work and I think it can make a big difference. I sound so cliche.
No, I mean, I think we're sort of dancing around because
Yes.
this episode would only be 5 minutes.
Right.
Um, if we just honestly said the truth, we wouldn't even have to have this episode. We could just scrap the whole thing, and we could just clip me saying this one sentence, which is what I think people are really mad about that you're in this space. Besides the misogyny aside, because like we're not gonna belabor that point too much, not because it's not an important point, but um, that is a whole other podcast that someone else can do who's in that space. But besides that, like who is this woman telling us what to do? Because I think if you were a 58-year-old white man who was in finance your whole life and then decided to be like a retail consultant, I think people would be like, but he's good with numbers.
Right.
Um, and so, besides that, what we're really getting to is people are asking you what I'm asking you, but they would never dare to say it, which is why do you care? Why are you here?
Yeah.
They don't want to, they're not going to ask it like that because they're never going to admit to themselves that I think on some level, some people are always mad that when you're a person who cares more than they do and it's obvious.
Mhm.
Um, and I only say that because I've only had this once in my career and I'll never have it again because I'll just leave. But I had a DM once where it was very obvious that he was mad that I cared about people more than he did. And it was obvious, like people could know, like, wow, Matt really cares and Mike does not. And it like bothered him. And in my head, it was like, well, you could just care. And then we won't have this like weird ego battle we're in.
Hmm.
But you don't, and it's not even that I don't think he wanted to care necessarily. I mean, I do think there was like some vulnerability issues there that stopped him from that. But I also think it was that like he thought he could do the business without that. Like that wasn't he didn't need, he could have that for his wife and his kids. He could care. But in this realm, care has no place. And to sort of reference something I wrote, a couple days ago or a day ago, like who I am personally, like Matt Copeland, in the
Hmm.
four walls of my business don't change because I've like entered four walls. Like, and so like people are people regardless of where they are. And again, all that to say, this episode could just be Bekki cares, and that's why she's here. And I don't think that that's good enough. I think people want to be like, okay, well, it's secretly like she's making millions of dollars. Or, and I bet you there are people that think this, so I just want to say it. I just want to get it out there. I'm sure there are people who are like, well, she can say this because there's no risk to her, or she's independently wealthy. She's a multi millionaire who, whatever. Um, there's going to be all sorts of reasons. And I say that only because when I left retail and was saying things, people were like, must be nice to have an option. And I don't know that I've ever said this explicitly in the podcast. So I will use this episode where we're talking about you being vulnerable. And I'll say this. I was living in my in law's unfinished basement, people. Unfinished. No, like, rafters and pipes and electrical above my head. And I made the very extreme choice that my value as a human, that my moral code superseded my desire to be in something more like this. Um, Also because I trusted my ability to get back uh, to whatever. But I'm saying all that to say there's a lot of people who probably think this
Hmm.
is why you can speak freely because you have
Yeah.
no skin in the game. So pull up your bank reports. No. So, but what I'd like to know is what is the risk to Bekki? Like, what is your skin in the game?
Yeah. Just so there's no confusion, I am not a millionaire. I am not independently wealthy. I do not come from money. I'm the youngest child of four of a single mother. We were on welfare our whole childhoods. Did not have money to do like go on trips, go to university. Yeah, so it's not that. Trust me. This honestly, the skin in the game is I think it's a little bit similar to why everyone DMs you instead of saying stuff out in the open. Not everything we talk about or I talk about is hyper palatable to corporate leaders, the folks who would hire me.
Mhm.
And so I made the decision knowing that I was going to say stuff that may make them feel called out or alienated, or like hopefully not, but like that maybe like stupid, disconnected. I think letting them hear the truth was more important than not hurting their feelings. And I think the kind of people who I will work well with will care more about my ability to get to the truth and make meaningful change in the way that they hope rather than their their feelings or their ego. So yeah, I'm in everything that we say together, it certainly does not make me the easy pick to
Mhm.
hire at all. And I'm already not the easy pick. I'm a small boutique agency, like a lot of the companies I work with can and do in some situations work with big, the big consulting groups.
Mhm.
Um, but in a really nice way, I've also worked with some that have worked with the big consulting groups and then worked with me and said that I was able to provide a lot more real, tangible value. and it's because of this. Like, it's because of the curiosity and the care. I mean, and your willingness to talk to me for so long and often. Um,
Well, it's
but yeah.
interesting. It's interesting that you say um, the piece around, you're saying things that people don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And I think we are in a world, in a system where it's interesting to me that people would hire consultants who only say what they want to hear. That to me is like another interesting, like, that's something to think about.
Yes.
Because to actually use something you said earlier, you said you know nothing about plumbing and you're endlessly fascinated. If you hire a plumber to fix something in your house, you don't want him to lie to you for to make your feelings good, right? Like maybe you designed your kitchen in a way where the piping is not going to work to put the sink where you want it to work. And maybe that's why you keep having issues with your sink. Like there keeps being a backup.
Right.
A bad plumber, read the analogy, people, a bad consultant would just fix the pipe being backed up, knowing he's coming back in 6 months.
Right.
A good plumber is going to be like, I'm so sorry. So this isn't where the pipe should be. Whoever built this the first time, they were going for aesthetics, not function. If you want the sink here, here's a couple of things we can do, but I'm gonna have to take the pipe into the basement, around the corner, up here, and you'll never have this issue again. Here's the cost. Or we can redesign, we can move the sink, also a higher cost, we can do this and we can put it around here. That's what a good plumber, read good consultant, will do. They're not gonna tell you what you want to hear. They're gonna tell you what needs to be done to make what you say you want to happen happen. Because that person in the house is gonna be like, I would like not to call a plumber in 6 months for another backed up sink.
Yes.
Um, and so and I would argue an even more bad plumber would be like, well, listen, we've replaced it twice with this pipe, but for an extra whatever, we can replace it with a copper pipe. And he's going to know that that copper pipe also going to back up the same because it's just a different material, same shape. And I'm really killing this analogy, but all of this to say, I do think that that's interesting that you're saying that because it's a fascinating principle to think about people hiring someone who tells them what they want to hear.
Right.
Because there's also the piece around for everything you say on this podcast, in your own posts, directly to companies, it's not like they have to take all of what you're saying. I mean, they could ignore you. I mean, they don't, there's no like
They do.
law. Yeah. There's no law. And one of the
Yeah.
things I wanted to ask you about being a sort of a smaller agency and maybe
Mhm.
too simplistic of a question, but why Cato?
Oh man, that is such a good question. Um, so to your, this is, I think, if I can preface it, and then you might have to remind me about the question. To what you were just talking about the plumbing is so interesting too, because when you're a consultant, a lot of the times companies will come to you with what they want, as opposed to just, I have a problem,
Mhm.
because they think they know, and they've had a way for a long time of how to fix the problem. In my experience, for me in my line of work, that's usually they'll come to me thinking they need some kind of like awareness campaign because store teams don't know about or believe in this. So more posters, more comms, more better way of saying something. And so that's I've gotten to a place where I'm very comfortable poking at what they actually came to me to ask for. So no, I won't just take your money and say like, yeah, I can build that. We can build that and it'll be beautiful. But I actually want to know like why you're doing it and what problem you're trying to solve. And so often that's, instead of being an awareness issue, it's actually an experience issue. There's something that there is happening to them day to day that's making them not believe in this thing. And very often my recommendation is to fix that and not pay tons of money in like a printed or, media campaign. So I think that's part of it. And it's really interesting. it's like, why Cato now? Because it seems contradictory to the whole premise of this episode. Is like, thanks to you and everyone else who has spent time with me and all the time I've spent talking to like the field leaders and the field folks at my clients' companies, I'm I'm decent at speaking store now.
Mhm.
And at least to get to a place where I'm asking the right questions, like
Mhm.
specific enough questions that I'm not wasting time. Because that's some of the feedback that we've gotten from companies that have worked with even big consulting groups or other larger agencies and then come to us. Spending so much time niching down in retail and specifically the gap and what happens when something goes from corporate to stores, it is a very niche type of work with themes that we've gotten really good at spotting and correcting and saving
Mhm.
companies money on what would otherwise have been very expensive campaigns or initiatives. And instead, trying to do what we came to do, which is just make it a little better in stores and the day to day. So I think that's the why. And honestly, even talking to you right now, I feel very vulnerable saying that because we've led up to this with my lack of experience in in retail, and now I'm at a point where like hire us because we're really good at understanding this problem.
Well, so for those who don't know, what is Cato? Like, where did it come from? What like spawned that being like, this is the name of my brand?
It was actually a Cato was a well, it was two Stoic philosophers, but there was an older and a younger. But I remember reading about one, and I'm 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 I dabble in Stoicism. I appreciate a lot of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember reading about Cato and thinking it's kind of neat that it sounds a little bit like my last name, which is Kate. But also reading about this one particular person, I think it's Cato the Younger, who was very values driven, very had a lot of integrity, but also liked wine a little bit too much. And I just thought that was a really cute. I don't know. I think that's all of us in a way. It's like we're all trying. We all have these like really strong beliefs, but like, yeah, man, we need to pull off some steam sometimes, and we have vices too, and that's fine. So that's the depth of the story of the name. It's not really more interesting than that.
And with that one sentence, she's hired by money. No. Um, there's an executive somewhere who's like, oh my God, wine?
Yeah,
Sure.
that's me. Why?
Um, so to sort of wrap it all up,
Hmm.
we've obviously discussed like the why you're here, why you care,
Hmm.
what keeps you going, what was the genesis of like how you first got into retail and your own experience like in a bad work environment. And again, we're not, to go back to my first thing, we're not going to, the point of this episode is not like a direct response to the haters, right?
Yeah.
But the haters did, for me, elucidate something, which is I'm talking a lot in episodes. And so people know me and they know my background. And you're sort of this like unknown quantity of like, who is she? What is she doing? So we're attempting to sort of bridge that gap here in this episode. And so my last question to you really is there something else I haven't asked or something else where you're like, maybe if people knew this, they would have a better understanding of who I am or what I'm about? Like, have we missed anything? Who is Bekki? The philosophical question.
Oh man. Yeah. I think one thing I want to say about like getting back to the haters, and if I'm remembering, this message was spawned like because he also commented on the video
Yeah.
that was of us talking, and that video was of you. I think the episode was about being the face of problems you don't control,
Hmm.
and it was about you taking heat as a store manager, as a store employee, for changes that corporate made to the product quality. And you were saying that, you know, customers think they're doing something by being like, well, I'm gonna like leave a review, and you thinking, no, please don't. Like, that's not gonna do what you think it's gonna do. I'm actually gonna get in trouble. And the person who messaged you was actually annoyed by that. They were like, so your whole thing is that you're going to get in trouble? Like, the point, I don't understand this. Like, the customer should be like, everything. And I think that right there illustrates that's the VP, right? Like, that's the VP that those like directors are designing for, who's not caring about like what's happening and how things are landing in stores. So I think, like, honestly, for me, that was a point. Hearing that he didn't even understand the point of us talking about this, that you would take this heat and potentially get in trouble for something, I think illustrates perfectly why new voices are needed and a new approach is needed. Because if you're telling me I don't get retail and you have all this experience, and you know what's really annoying about that too is those folks are always the first to be like, I spent years on the floor. I have tremendous respect for store teams. Well, then fucking prove it. Like, you know what I mean? You say that, but then you act like we're foolish for having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe you now. I think you just say that. I think that's worth finding out. Uh, I think the other thing that's coming to mind, and it's funny, I actually said this yesterday when asked why Cato. I was thinking, what would be so cool is if you knew as a store employee that your company was bringing Cato in, you were pumped because you were like, okay, they're serious. Like, we're going to see it might not be fast, it might not be everything, but we know that our company is choosing an agency that's going to tell them the hard things, and it's actually going to make stuff better here. It's like, that would be a dream of mine. And yeah, I do think it's so funny that guy sent a friend request asking someone to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Like,
Do you want to connect with me over our mutual hate of this woman we've never met? We're mature retail leaders who care about people.
right. Yeah. Yeah. And if I didn't cover something, or if anyone wants to poke at anything else, like, just shoot me a message. I'm becoming more of an open book. I've traditionally been like a very put together, closed off type of person, but now that I'm, middle aged, I feel a little bit more like, whatevs.
Well, I think as people get to know someone too, they like want to know more naturally. Like, they're like, okay, what are the motivations? And I think what you've shared here, I want to thank you for sharing, because I think what you've shared here is actually more than a lot of people in this space share about themselves. And I think we assume that people who work in the industry who have the experience you don't have, we just assume their motivations and intentions are good ones just because they have the experience. And I don't think that that's an assumption anyone should make. And so, I just want to thank you for this episode. It was interesting being on the other side. I can't wait to get back to my normal answering questions place. The uncomfortableness you feel in the answering is the uncomfortableness I feel in the asking. And not for the reason people think where I just want to talk. It's really just because this takes a level of like paying attention and engagement and like threads that I'm not used to. So I hope I also did okay. But thank you for today.
Well, thank you for suggesting it too. It's not something I never would have suggested myself. But I do think it's helpful, and I like just facing things head on anyway. So if anyone else was wondering, I would rather do that. And I mean, the whole point of this too is like, and the whole point of my work is I don't show up to any client with answers. I show up exactly like this. I'm asking questions. So, the fact that I didn't come up in it and I don't have the experience, it's like, the point is I don't walk in with solutions. The point is I know what questions to ask and how to listen. So yeah, this was harder. But I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. You're listening to Dear Corporate
love stores.